I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report taking a look at the biggest winners and losers for 2025. This is the last stock report of the year, and I like to go back and look at some of the fighters who I thought stock went up and fighters stock who went down, and I'll explain my reasoning for every single fighter I'm about to talk about in today's video. And after you're done watching, let me know in the comments your three biggest stock risers, three biggest stock droppers for 2025. So there's a lot of choices on this one, but the biggest stock riser, in my opinion, for 2025 has got to be Islam Makhachev. Wins the second title. Has a short notice fight against Moicano, which again, I know easier opponent. I talked about this in another video, but the fact that he accepted it, no questions asked, went in there, got the first round finish. Islam was an absolute gangster for doing that. And then he follows that up, moving up a weight class, fighting Jack Della Maddalena and dominating him in that fight. To me, no one's stock went up higher. Islam was already a big star in the UFC. To win a second belt, that's something that even Khabib Nurmagomedov didn't do. A lot of fighters have not done. So that, to me, as far as overall stock, Islam's going to go down as one of the best fighters of all time, if not the best fighter of all time, with the run he's been on. It's been incredible. Again, just to see him do this in a different weight class, super impressive there. So yeah, I don't think there's any debate here. Nobody's stock went up more than Islam Makhachev's this year. He was already a big star prior to coming into 2025, but this year he took it to another level, winning another belt. Islam Makhachev, biggest stock riser in my opinion. Now, he gets the edge slightly over this guy in Ilia Topuria, whose stock also went up as well. And keep in the context of, like, I'm talking about big names in the UFC, right? So I'm sure there were fighters on the prelims or guys that went undefeated this year. That's not really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the overall scope of the UFC roster, whose stock went up the most as far as that goes. And with Topuria, again, just like Islam, he's in a different stratosphere now that he's won a second belt. I know he was favored against Oliveira. I know he was supposed to win. He gets the win. Doesn't matter. It's the fact he's got two belts now. He joins a very small class of fighters that have won two belts. So you got to give him his props there. Now, the reason I didn't put him ahead of Islam is because he only fought one time. He's got to be a little bit more active. And we already know that the start of 2026, he's got some things to take care of outside the cage. So he will not be back in here anytime soon. At least not in the early part of the year. If I'm guessing, he'll probably be back in the summer, something around there, maybe save him for the White House card. But still, Topuria's stock, I've said this time and time again, he is one of the biggest stars in the UFC, and you don't have to look further than the fact that he was invited on the pitch for Real Madrid. You just don't see fighters get those types of opportunities. That is one of the biggest opportunities you can have in the sporting world. That speaks volumes to how big Topuria is, not only representing Spain, but being Georgian as well. He's just got a bit of everything. So Topuria, one of the biggest superstars in the UFC, exciting. Doesn't have like the McGregor type personality, but he has a lot of McGregor's qualities as far as how he performs in the cage, how he dresses, all that stuff. He is one of the biggest superstars in the UFC, and Ilia Topuria absolutely is one of the big stock risers this year. And then my third biggest stock riser this year has to be Khamzat Chimaev. And again, same thing to Topuria, only fought the one time, but it was such a dominant win over Dricus Du Plessis. You think of how big the Muslim community is in MMA. You think of how big, the Russians are as well. The fan base. He is probably, him and Islam are probably the two biggest stars from that area. And just internationally, he's one of the biggest stars too. Everyone's talking about him all the time. And for him to now be an official champion, because it's taken a bit, right? With the whole, there was the COVID, the health issues, and the different weight classes. But now it seems like he's found a home at middleweight. He's the new champ. Khamzat Chimaev, one of the biggest stars in the UFC, especially now that he is a champion. So he's my third biggest stock riser. Okay, honorable mentions. I'll throw a few in here because, again, there's a lot of different ways you could go, and there's a bunch of champions I didn't even mention. But I mentioned him in other videos. Joshua Van has to get an honorable mention. Again, not the cleanest title win with the injury and everything, but it's the fact that he was very active this year. The Brandon Royval fight gave us one of the best fights in UFC history. It's a fight he ended up winning. And then add in the fact that he's still very young, 24 years old. And he also has a pretty big fan base. Like I've said this before, anytime I've done a Joshua Van interview, the fans that he has from Myanmar, they tune in and they watch him fight. They're very supportive of that. So Van, another guy, maybe not in North America, but internationally, very big here. Him winning the title certainly adds a bit more to that. Joshua Van, big stock riser this year for sure. Then another fighter that we got to mention as well as a stock riser is Petr Yan. Again, former champion, comes back, wins the belt. You don't see that too often of a fighter losing their belt and then making their way back. Yan does that. He's the guy to take out Merab. He has the secret sauce to do it. It's just super impressive, especially when you consider, if you go back to January of this year when Merab beat Umar Nurmagomedov, Umar was sort of seen as the guy to beat Merab. Merab ends up beating him, but now Yan perseveres, keeps going through, has a couple wins in 2024, comes back in 2025 and wins the belt. His stock goes up because, again, internationally, another Russian here. This is the third Russian I've mentioned. The Russia's taken over the UFC, man. It's pretty incredible. So Petr Yan has to get an honorable mention. Got to mention Mackenzie Dern as well. A lot of people didn't think Mackenzie Dern was going to be UFC champion. Weili moves up. It's an opportunity for Dern to go and fight for the title. She wins the title over Verna, also has a win over Amanda Ribas. Her stock goes up too. And like I mentioned as well, good looking girl, easy to market. Like these are things that the UFC is looking at from a business standpoint. Mackenzie Dern, absolutely a stock riser there. And I'll go with one non-champion here. We'll go with Michael Morales. Got to talk about his run this year. Again, what I really like here is the age, 26 years old, and coming off that knockout win over Sean Brady. It doesn't get much bigger than that. You know, the Gilbert Burns fight, you could say, oh, he's fighting an older guy, he knocks him out. But to knock out Sean Brady, I know Brady's been knocked out before, but very impressive there. He looks like, I'm super interested to see what type of 2026 Michael Morales has, because with that knockout power, you go in there with anyone, even like an Islam, it becomes a little bit more intriguing with the fact that this guy can seemingly knock out anyone. So Michael Morales, huge stock riser this year, got to put him out there. And I know there's other names like Yuri and other guys like Imavov who went undefeated, but these were the names that really stood out to me in 2025. So that's who I'm going with my stock risers. So just to recap, stock risers are Islam, Ilya, and Chimaev. Don't think there's going to be much debate there. Let's get to stock droppers. Now, this guy didn't have a lot of stock going into the year, but it's the context of everything. Biggest stock dropper this year is Isaac Bulgarian, and the simple fact is he doesn't have a gym anymore. He's not with the UFC. He's involved in a betting scandal, allegedly. The FBI is investigating him, and he may never fight again. I mean, your stock can't get much lower for a guy that probably will never fight in the UFC again, right? Like, you know, that's about as big of a stock drop as you could get. And the thing I'll add too, and I talked about this in another video with Bulgarian, it's the fact that he was a good fighter. Still is a good fighter. 29 years old, in the prime of his career. Some incredible wrestling. You talk to anyone at Factory X, they'll tell you this was the guy that was the toughest, giving you the toughest rounds in the gym. Super exciting prospect, and involved in this is just so disappointing. So that's the part that really sucks. Like the Derek Minner thing, he's older fighter. You know, he wasn't going to be winning a UFC title. There was potential there with Bulgarian, so his stock's in the toilet. He might have to change careers right now. It's not looking good for Isaac Bulgarian. Biggest stock dropper, no questions asked. Second biggest stock dropper in the UFC has got to be Patchy Mix. And again, it comes down to the expectations when he came in. A lot of people felt like he was the best bantamweight outside the UFC, that he was going to make some noise. And he goes 0-2 in the UFC to start. And right now you're getting him at 32 in the prime of his career. Like, this is it, right? So he's got to figure things out. Can he rebound in 2026? We'll have to see here. But Patchy Mix, again, there was tons of hype outside the UFC for him, and his stock dropped big time with the fact that he went 0-2. So yeah, Patchy Mix, big stock dropper for 2025. And then third biggest stock dropper this year has got to be Leon Edwards. And again, it's not the fact that Leon Edwards has lost fights. That happens. It's the fact that he's been finished in back-to-back fights. And then in addition to this, he's not even that old. Like he'll be 35 in August of next year. But usually when you see guys later in their 30s, like 37, 38, 39, around there, that's when you start to see a decline. But this decline for Edwards is something else. Huge stock drop. I wouldn't even have a problem putting Edwards number 2. I still think Bulgarian's number 1 because, again, at least these guys are going to fight again. Patchy Mix and Leon Edwards. Bulgarian may never fight again after this whole thing. So, yeah, Edwards coming in as number 3 is my stock dropper. Got to mention him as well. Okay, couple honorable mentions here for stock droppers in 2025. And like I said, there's a lot of different ways you could go. Got to put Israel Adesanya in here. Disappointing loss to DDP in 2024. He gets the fight with Imavov. Maybe he's got one run left at a title, and he ends up getting knocked out. And the thing is, like, Imavov's not really like a knockout artist either. So the fact that he got knocked out by Imavov, I think looks even worse. Imavov does have knockout wins, but he's not really known for it. Like if you would have told me who's going to knock out, you know, Adesanya at middleweight, I wouldn't have had Imavov as like high on the list. Like he can knock guys out, but it's just not like he's not known for that. So it's the fact that he gets knocked out in this fight, and then he only fights the one time in February. I mean, we're getting to the latter half of his career. He's 36. He's going to be 37 in July. Like, where does Adesanya go from here? Just and he had a bunch of stock a couple of years ago, right? When he was champion, he was one of the most popular fighters in the UFC, and now he's staring at 3 losses in a row. It's a tough stock drop there for Israel Adesanya, who gets an honorable mention. Got to mention Bilal Muhammad as well. Was the champion last year, one of the best title wins you've seen when he took out Leon Edwards. And then this year, it's been the opposite. Loses to JDM, then loses to Ian Gary. He's 0-2. And the other concern there is the age. He'll be 38 in July, 37 right now. It's going to be tough for him to get back as you've got the Sharks swirling around right now. We got a new champion, Islam Makhachev, and then you've got other guys waiting in the wings, whether it's Ian Gary or Carlos Prates or Michael Morales or Shavkat. There's a lot of contenders right now. I just don't think Bilal is going to get back to title contention, but we'll see. But yeah, his stock goes down just because of the optics. And last but not least, Jamal Hill's stock went down a lot this year for 2 reasons. Number one is the fact that he got, obviously lost back-to-back fights here against Prohaska and Khalil Roundtree. You thought maybe this year he'd rebound and get it done. I thought he looked a little bit better in the Prohaska fight, but the Khalil Roundtree fight didn't look good in that. And then it's the combination of him getting injured again and him being out for a while. So my understanding is Hill won't be back until late 2026. So he's losing another year. He was already out a while with another injury as well. Previous to this, That's the one where he had to vacate the title. 34 years old, going to be 35 in May. It's going to be an uphill battle for Jamal Hill, but his stock has certainly gone down with having a really rough 2025. So let me know in the comments your top 3 stock risers, your top 3 stock droppers for 2025. There's a lot of different ways you can go here. I kind of went with some obvious ones, but I also added in a few other ones and gave my reasoning for why they are. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Get your top 3, bottom 3. Would love to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.